Now, I would imagine that Dana is probably pretty unhappy about this, only because he seems so excited about the fight. But if we're being honest, this was super off-brand for the UFC. Straight up. I mean, Dana understood what I understand, what these guys understand, what anybody who has a brain understands. This is going to be the biggest event ever. All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back. So we got a big story, huge story. So Dana and the UFC are being cut out of the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg MMA fight. And the other big story coming out of this is that fight is moving forward. As of today, we know that fight's going to happen. Okay? That fight's going to happen. And I guess I could say unless Zuck pulls out, this fight's happening. And it seems like all systems are go, but Dana and the UFC have been cut out of this process. I'm going to show you the information that just came out. It is unequivocal. UFC is out. UFC's out and the event is moving forward. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that is happening. So there's I think there was an impression this was happening in the UFC. They seem to have been entertaining that between them. And now I'm going to tell you exactly why this has been nixed. All right. So we're going to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about, the video that I did yesterday, I did about Wonderboy's situation. I reacted to Ariel's video. If you guys couldn't tell, I had not watched that video yet. I watched like the first minute of that video and then I stopped it and I was like, I want to do this video reacting genuinely, having not seen it. And so that video is totally genuine. I hadn't seen it at all before I recorded. But now Josh Thompson did a very similar video yesterday where he was reacting to some of the things that Luke Thomas said about the same topic. And there's a really interesting point brought up by Luke. Well, first of all, you should watch Josh Thompson's take on it too, because he gives his take from the perspective of a fighter. And I mean, without playing my own trumpet here, he's certainly well aligned with all of the things that I said yesterday on my video. That's not the point. That's not why I'm, pointing attention to it. But he had some really interesting points. One of the reasons I actually wanted to point attention to it is because one of the things that Luke Thomas said in the video, what I hadn't even thought about, and it's a really important point. And it has to do with why the system is set up the way that it's set up and why the UFC is doing what they're doing. I mean, it's almost like if I talk for 30 minutes about a topic and then there's a critical piece of information that I left out, I just have to put it in. So we're going to do that also. And that's what we're going to do. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would love you forever if you did, because that is the only analytic that I pay attention to is my subscriber base going up. And that's all. And also, you know what? I never asked about this. If you don't mind liking this video, that would be incredible. If you're my regular viewers, just click like and I will, I'll send you a picture of my, I'm just kidding. That was going to be a dick pic joke, but it was a joke. So anyway, let's rock and roll. Now we are going to talk about this. So actually, let me just do this a different way because everybody just needs to read this all at once. And now we're going to do this. All right. So Elon Musk tweeted out, the fight will be managed by my and Zuck's foundations, not UFC. Live streams will be on this platform and Meta. Everything in camera frame will be in ancient Rome, so nothing modern at all. I spoke to the Prime Minister of Italy and Minister of Culture. They have agreed on an epic location. Yahtzee. Wow. That is exciting news. So in case you can't... I'm sorry. And then everything will be done to pay respect to the past and present of Italy, and all proceeds go to veterans. All right. So that last part, very cool. That last part, why this is happening. Okay? Partially. I mean, first of all, let's just break this down. Okay? They're going to do it at the Colosseum in Rome. Okay? Elon and Zuckerberg are going to do their fight at the Colosseum in Rome. First of all, let's just think about this for a second, okay? Out of every cage fight that you've ever watched in your entire combat sports career, the two least tough, professionally trained. Well, actually, I don't know about Elon, dude. Elon, he feels like the kind of guy, I've said this before. Maybe he's got he might be sneaking on fools, dude. He's the kind of crazy ass dude that would have a black belt in judo, a black belt in some stand up, discipline, And he would not only not tell anyone, he would like go and train with Danaher and go train with Lex, and just show just enough to where they're like, man, he's really strong, and he's so crazy that he would just not show it, and then he would use it to strangle Zuckerberg to death. But like, I mean, not to death, but you know what I mean. But so if you think about the martial arts pedigree of all the cage fights you've watched, it's hilarious that the one that we're going to watch as like the gladiators are coming home to Rome and they're going to do this in the Colosseum is Zuckerberg and Elon. Okay, forget about the fact they're billionaires and just look, it's like, all right, so we got this 55-year-old tech entrepreneur against a brand new blue belt in jiu-jitsu who's done some stand-up also. He's 135 pounds and he's a tech genius billionaire. It's like if this doesn't demonstrate what it's like to be a billionaire, then I don't know what does, dude, okay? Like, seriously. Zuckerberg's been doing martial arts for a year. And he's fighting in the Colosseum, okay? And every single person in the world is going to watch it. It's hilarious, dude. Come on, dude. If anybody needs an example, like, what's it like to be a billionaire? That's what it's like to be a billionaire. Okay? That's what it's like. And then, hey, how do regular people die? You know, like, how do regular people die generally? It's like, well, heart disease, cancer, things like that. Every once in a while, car accident, something tragic like that. It's like, what's it like to die as a billionaire? They're like, oh, well, usually they live to like 110 years old somehow. Or, there's also the other thing where, they get crushed in submarines going down to the Titanic. You're like, crushed in a submarine going down to the Titanic? Yeah. Billionaires, man, they're crazy. It's like, all right. But yeah, so the reason that this is happening, though, I don't want to bury the lead. The reason that this is happening is because, in my opinion, they want to, like, the UFC is not going to do this for free, right? Like, the UFC, when UFC puts on fights, okay, they control every aspect of the fight, okay? We've talked about this a million times. When we talk about boxing, there's a reason why Nate Diaz made more money on this boxing match than he did in any other UFC fight, in his entire UFC fight, career combined. Is because the UFC is a well-oiled machine. They literally just plug fighters into a machine that is always working, which costs a lot of money. And so by nature, the fighters cannot make as much money, and because the organization takes so much off the top. Okay, so the UFC is not going to like completely change the way they do business for this. And the main reason why people have a hard time putting up their own fights, promoting their own fights or doing their own fights is because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the money, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the distribution ability, and they don't have the ability to market it well on their own. Okay, well, so here. Elon is Elon. They have all the money in the world. They have they between the two of them, they own the two largest streaming sources in the world except for YouTube. Okay? They have the connections to put this on in the Colosseum in Rome, and the money generated, instead of going to Dana and the UFC, nothing against them, but to a profit-driven organization, they're going to take all the money that's generated and they're going to give it to veterans. Okay? That's awesome. I'm sorry. That's awesome. Now, I would imagine that Dana is probably pretty unhappy about this, only because he seems so excited about the fight. But if we're being honest, this was super off-brand for the UFC. Straight up. I mean, Dana understood what I understand, what these guys understand, what anybody who has a brain understands. This is going to be the biggest event ever. Okay? If you think I'm wrong about that, I promise you there's a reason why I'm sitting here and talking to you about this. I know this shit, okay? Like, this shit I understand. There's no question that I'm right. Everyone, every single person who has ever thought about martial arts, has ever heard of Elon and Zuck, and does not have a straight up aversion to violence, is going to watch this. Every fucking person is going to watch this. And so, they do not need any kind of marketing machine, right? It's going to be the biggest fight ever. So Dana knew that, and of course Dana wants to put it in the UFC. But bottom line, it's off-brand, dude. It's super off-brand. It's super off-brand. And as much as it would have generated so much money, I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't feel right to me. I've seen this movie where the UFC has guys who are untrained go, not untrained, but guys who have limited training go in there. You remember CM Punk? Okay, it wasn't a good fight, and people booed it. You know what I mean? And here's the thing: like, you have recency bias. Everyone does. And so if you're watching an event and you have world-class guys, and very much not world-class guys, it's by comparison, it's going to look terrible. It's going to look bad. You know, it's going to look bad. Now, I do want to say this, though. This is an MMA fight, right? And now we know this is happening, okay? Like, this thing's going to happen. And I just want you guys to seriously think about this for a second, dude. Like, this isn't a grappling competition, right? We went to Who's Number One last night, and I mean, I always say this, that like grappling is like the sneaky martial art where people don't really understand what they're watching. You know, where it's like, oh, you know, it's super like I've heard a million people be like, jiu-jitsu is by far the most soy martial art, and I understand why it looks like that because it used to look like that to me years ago before I did it, where it's like, yeah, you know, like. They're on the ground kind of going like this. You're not kicking or punching or whatever. Like, I understand why it looks like that. And then as soon as you start training, you will understand that it is the opposite of that. Because what you're training to kill people with your bare hands, okay? You take a 6-month white belt, okay? And you fight them in the street. You live if they choose to allow you to survive, okay? Like, I just seriously think about that just for a second, where it's like, and I realize I'm derailing this conversation really quick, but I feel like I always need to make this point. Street fight with two untrained people, they run out of energy, right? They run out of energy, and then it's over. Sometimes someone gets knocked out, and in that case, yeah, I mean, you choose not to stomp their head into the ground until they die, But like, what you're learning to do in jiu-jitsu is literally to strangle people to death. You let go when people tap because they're like, okay, yeah, you have me beat. This is a sport. Okay, well, out there, it's not a sport, dude. There's no sport. Daniel Penny found out the hard way that by not even applying a technique hard, he killed a guy. Okay, jiu-jitsu, you're learning to kill people with your bare hands every single day. And you're learning how to defend against people trying to kill you with their bare hands because they're trying to get in position to kill you by strangling you or shatter your arms. And you're like, I can't let this guy get in that position, so he can't do it. Like a even mediocre like level jiu-jitsu person can kill you with their bare hands if they decide to. It's as simple as that. It's a superpower. But nonetheless, on television, right? On television, it's in sport, you catch them in something, tap, it's over. Okay, this is a mixed martial arts fight. If they're really going to fight for real, if Elon gets on top of Zuckerberg and starts throwing elbows into his face, like just smashing his face, like you're going to see Mark Zuckerberg with his face split open, bleeding. He's a tough fucker, dude. Like, seriously, I just want, like, I now that this is actually happening, I'm starting to actually think about what this is going to be like. There's a chance that Zuckerberg's jiu-jitsu, he'll be able to, isolate a limb or choke Elon or whatever. But based on what I've seen from the training and reading between the lines, what Danaher and GSP and Lex said about Elon is that he's ridiculously strong. He's like ridiculously strong, and he does have technique with judo. It's like, so jiu-jitsu, if a guy can smash you from the top, if a guy is good enough to get on top of you and now he can smash your head in, like, there is a medium to high possibility that that's how this fight goes. And he's punching Zuckerberg in the face with his face split open. And I've seen Zuckerberg try to fight his way out of a relatively locked in guillotine. And I'm pretty sure he actually went out in one of his tournaments rather than tap. So he's a tough fucker, dude. So he's going to get his fucking head split and he's just going to keep fighting. So Elon and Zuckerberg are going to be in a bloody ass MMA fight. It's going to be nuts, man. Seriously. It's going to be fucking crazy. But anyway, yeah, I mean, all the profits are going to the veterans. I think that's awesome. I'm sure Dana's pissed, but candidly, I know the money probably is, it's probably a staggering amount what they were estimating they could make happen for this. And obviously Elon and Zuck were serious about doing the fight, and they were going back and forth with Dana. And Elon probably went to Zuckerberg and he's like, what the fuck do we need the UFC for? What are we doing? You know, let's do something really cool. Let's do it in the Colosseum in Rome, you know? And then he tweets that out and it's over. And it's like, and Dana's probably pissed because they were both talking to Dana about it being serious. And now Dana's out. But if there is any solace to be taken from this, you know, I mean, obviously I'm sure Dana's not going to see this, but if there is any solace to be taken from this as the, you know, UFC as an organization, it's that this was super fucking off brand. If you're going to do it under the UFC banner, I mean, yeah, you get a lot of promotion, you know, you get a lot of widespread promotion, but everybody already knows about UFC, dude. You know, as I'm saying this now, I'm thinking this through and I'm wrong. There's no solace actually, because even though it was off brand, what it was going to do is, like I said, every person on earth was going to watch it. And so what Dana was going to do is he was going to load the undercard with like the best fighters in the world so that people would learn who are their best. Like it probably was going to be the most stacked card in the history of the sport. Fuck me. It was going to probably be the most stacked card ever. Because that's what you would use it for. It's not just about the money. It's about the exposure because everybody's going to watch it. And the reason that people choose to watch fights is because they know a person who's fighting in the fight. And so you use the exposure and you get all your best, biggest stars on there and then boom. Now I'm kind of bummed out actually. But whatever. Still going to get to see these two billionaires beat the shit out of each other. And I'm excited about it because, again, this is the culture war. Okay? This is the culture war. If I'm being honest, there's a reason I put Luke Thomas on this video. Beyond just that he made a really good point. Okay? I went after his politics, you know, a couple weeks ago. And you want to know where me and Luke Thomas's politics align? And I would assume Ariel's also. Anyone that's in combat sports is this toxic masculinity fucking horse shit. Okay? If people have been right, like I got a couple comments on a couple of my videos that I did like in members only where they were like, dude, why are you worried about this dumb shit? Like who cares about these stories? Dude, these culture war stories matter, dude. And these people are like toxic masculinity. Okay, well, what are they actually saying? You know, like I have kids, man. Promoting ideas that like being irresponsible and being a little pussy, you know, I'm not talking about going out and beating people up in the street, but being a strong man that takes care of your shit is important. And being disciplined enough to go to train in a martial art every day, you know, to get good enough at a martial art that you're willing to go in front of the world and fight another man. Like that is the biggest fuck you to all of these soy pussy ass motherfuckers in the world. That's why I've said it every time I've talked about this fight. I've said it. And what I'm saying is like your opinion on the jab, your opinion on fucking, you know, I don't know, Kyle Rittenhouse, whatever, that stuff, that shit is just what channel you're watching, okay? You're watching the wrong fucking channel if you're not agreeing with me. I have all the right information all the time. But this shit, this transcends all of that, okay? This transcends all of that because this is about like, what do we want our society to be? Do we want to be a society of skirt-wearing, pussy-ass weirdos, okay, who complain about why they don't have this or that, and they don't go work for shit? They point at people who have money, and they're like, they should just be spreading the wealth. Get a fucking job, dude. You're in America. It's easy, dude. All you have to do is just work hard. Decide what you want and fucking work hard. State a goal. Do the things. If you don't make it, here's the reality. You won't feel as sorry as you do now, okay? I started at zero, nothing, not one fucking contact in the mixed martial arts community 3 years ago. And now I'm here because I set a goal and I was like, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to set goals that I can control. I can post a video every single day. I can't control how many subscribers I get, but I can control how much output I have. So I committed to how much output I was going to make and I fucking did it. No deals, no excuses. Every fucking day I did a goddamn video and I put it up no matter what. Okay? Doesn't need to be the best video ever, but I'm going to fucking put out content every single day because that's what I committed to do. The reason I'm in the position that I'm in now is because I committed to a goal and I did the work. The opposite of what these people are preaching over here. They might say, oh, toxic masculinity. What they're actually saying is don't be a strong person that does this. Complain for a living. Complain about how, oh, you know, geez, like, that, you know, that way of living is just so last year. Jordan Peterson is such a problematic guy. You're like, have you ever watched him speak? Because if you did, he would probably fix your life, you fucking little... I was going to use a word that I would have had to edit out. Some words that I say don't mean what I think they say, and I've learned that. But, yeah, so this fight matters for all of us. All of us need to be behind this fucking fight. It's the biggest fuck you to that movement that you will ever have ever. Zuck and Elon control the flow of information. If everybody knows that the two guys at the top of these two platforms are willing to train in fucking martial arts and fight each other in a cage, then that shuts down this entire worldview it burns it to the ground, dude. Ashes. So let's go, Elon and Zuck. I don't want to hear anybody complaining about how it's a shitty fight afterwards either. The fight was awesome no matter what. Okay? Everybody needs to throw all their weight behind this fucking fight.
About what Luke's segment is none of it's negative. It's just I think a lot of it is as a fighter. As a fighter that it's my point of view. And as a media source, which he is his point of view.
Talk about Wonderboy. Oh yeah, right. Not getting paid has again shown to me how little those around MMA understand how the sausage is made. I had UFC fighters send me their contracts, and I asked to see some of them, and every single one had the exact same provision as it relates to what I'm about to say. There is nothing that I've seen in anyone's UFC contract. Now, I've not seen every UFC contract, but I can say every UFC contract that I have seen has the exact same provision. Purse and bonus. That's it. Purse only gets paid upon...
So in that, look, that is true, but what you also have to remember, every state can hold that promotion liable for, hey, the fighter made the weight, you need to pay them. Now, that may change.
We discussed that in my video. I apologize. I started this video too early. If I don't remember to edit it out, just enjoy Josh Thompson and Luke Thomas's faces. The point that I wanted to respond to is coming up in here in a second.
Based on the UFC and Bellator and those companies may understand that, and they may only go to certain states knowing that, hey, if this fighter's on this card, we could be stuck paying them their $250,000.
Here's the other thing about that I didn't mention is, I mentioned it kind of superficially, is that as I found out the legality around these states, the implication was that there's a high probability that fighters don't know that fighters don't know that if because if you're an employee or an independent contractor with an organization and you're trying to figure out whether or not they owe you money, you look at the contract. That's how you figure out whether or not they owe you money. It's not traditional, unless you have fantastic representation, for you to then go beyond the contract and look at state law and then decide whether or not you have some kind of legal ramifications that you could, the civil case or whatever. However you settle these things in court. Don't break my balls. I didn't go to law school, even though I sound like I did sometimes. But, you go to the state law and you're like, hey, look, this contract, even though I'm not protected here, I'm protected by state law, you still have to pay. And then the UFC goes, oh, is this guy really going to sue? I mean, bottom line is there have probably been hundreds of incidents where fighters were owed money. The organization knows that, but they're not just going to pay unless the person asks for the money. You always have to ask for the money, okay? You always have to ask for the money. And so if you don't ask the right way, like, hey, man, I know what state we're in. You guys have to pay the show money. Then you're not going to get it, And the UFC has demonstrated, and I also think another fair point to make about this, if in case any fighters watch this, or up-and-coming fighters, or any current fighters, is that the UFC has demonstrated that if you get into a financial litigation of any kind with them, whether it was Mark Hunt, etc., they will go to court, defend it, or they will settle it, whatever, and it doesn't seem to affect your career, Like guys sue and win against UFC, Mark Hunt, and then get fights afterwards, right? And so I think the reason why that's important to note is because fighters, I believe, in many cases, will not rock the boat with the UFC because they don't want it to affect their career, because in some cases they've had experiences with the UFC where they played hardball negotiating and they're like, geez, man, I don't want to get into that again. I don't want them to play it hard on me. And I am going to say with extraordinarily high confidence that if they were playing hardball against you, it wasn't personal. Okay. They're playing their leverage position, and this is how, the bottom line, line item at the end of the year for what they pay fighters is affected tremendously by how hard they negotiate against each individual fighter. And so if you got into a situation like that, and then now you think you maybe owed your show money or you maybe owed some other type of money, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to rock the boat because I don't want them to yada yada. Dude, those two things are not connected. You know, they're not connected. I mean, if you're being unreasonable, maybe, you know, like if you're being unreasonable with the UFC, of course, like definitely don't do that. But if you're legally owed money and you go to the UFC and you're like, look, man, state law, they'll respect you for that. You know, they'll respect you that you were smart enough to go look it up and come, come ask for it. Anyway, sorry, I just derailed this thing, but let's continue.
Or they're $500,000 for their show money or whatever it is, if they make the weight. Some fighters, I remember back in the day, there was some fighters like Chuck Liddell. He had a flat fee, but then he got paid on these pay-per-view dollars. And everyone's like, oh, well, he only made, $500,000. And that would have been his show money. There was a flat fee for him to show up and fight, whether there was no win and there was no show and win for Chuck Liddell. It was a flat fee, and then he got a pretty high number for like dollars per pay-per-view buy, say $3 per pay-per-view buy, or $4 or whatever it was per pay-per-view buy is what Chuck got. And other fighters, other top fighters too. That's a lot with their contract.
That's exactly right. When I say, it's another point that I need to make actually now that he just said that is because later he says, I think right here actually, he says like, let's say John Jones, is going to get his base salary and let's say it's $750,000. And I was like, dude, he gets paid a hell of a lot more than $750,000, dude. But I realized that the way that these contracts are structured with the top guys is when I say Israel Adesanya has a $3.5 million base salary, right? That's what I'm talking about. But let me just qualify that in a second. So is that he makes $3.5 million to show, and then he gets pay-per-view. There's no win bonus for Izzy. Unless his contract is very different than other, large contracts. That's how it works. Big base, and then you get paid on the back end for the pay-per-views. But the other thing to note is that some of that is paid in side letters, so they don't have to disclose it. So like as an example, if you went and looked and it was like, oh, I thought Kamaru Usman makes, whatever. It says he only made a $700,000 base. No, he did not make a $700,000 base. They might have structured it where it's like, okay, his show money 700, side letter 2 million, so like it's that is his base, and it might not be structured as like show money technically, right? So like when I said $3.5 million to Izzy yesterday or 3 million, whatever, it's possible that in his contract his show money is like $1 million, and then he gets 2.5 in a side letter or whatever. But like anyway, so I don't really. Anyway, that's what it is.
Mark says you have a flat fee of this when you show up and fight, and then you get this on the pay-per-view side. So he's talking about like his portion of what he understands or what he has seen from the contracts that have been sent to him from other fighters. Go ahead.
On bout completion, there are no mechanisms to force the UFC to pay if you weigh in and your opponent misses and then the fight for whatever reason falls through. Wonderboy was able to say no to the fight because I guess he has enough financial freedom that he's able to do that, which is a great thing. I'm very glad to see that. Money is really not the issue here, right? In terms of like, does the UFC, are they good for it? Like, yes, they can easily afford to pay this and a whole lot more. What they don't want is to be shown that there's a way to say no to things that interrupt the UFC's ability to churn out content at the schedule that they have set up for themselves. They don't want guys to be able to say no to that if they can at all help it. And so if they don't bend to the leverage here, it's not so much about like denying Wonderboy as it is just kind of sending a message being like, we're just not going to be leveraged for this.
Okay, stop.
And so that's what I wanted to show you. Okay. That is a super important point. And he's exactly right. And I know I broke Luke's balls about the, whatever shit a couple weeks ago. But like, I mean, again, I never said anything about his MMA takes. And the fact that he had people send the contracts over demonstrates the, he's a guy, like, he's doing good research on the front end, but the point that he makes there is completely valid and super important, because it basically would sit on top of my entire video yesterday. And I did, like, that's what I'm saying. That's why I had to show that to you, because it's such a good take where it's like, dude, think about this. All right. So the examples that I gave yesterday, okay, well, Izzy would make $3 million. If he doesn't fight, you still pay him $3 million. That's, that still stands. But how about the fact that if they pay Wonderboy his full show money when he didn't fight, now Ariel's talking about precedent, right? It's all about precedent. Okay, well, so now you've set the precedent that if someone misses weight, you cannot fight and still get paid your show money. Okay, look, dude. Spoiler, and this is not going to come as any kind of new information to any UFC fighters or anyone who's ever competed in combat sports at all, whether it's jiu-jitsu tournaments or karate tournaments or whatever, okay? You have to be a tough guy to do that in general, but everybody is like, not everybody, Kevin Holland definitely not, but a lot of people are super nervous before they fight. UFC fighters. Like, I've heard stories from guys about, I mean, I won't name names, but like big name guys who they know, like another fighter told me they were like crying in the locker room. And they, like, guys you would never imagine in a million years that this story was about them. And they were like, and they were refusing to go out, you know, like they're like, I'm not doing it. And then in that exact fight, they went out and smashed the person's face in. True story, you know, true story. Like, upset enough in the locker room that they were literally crying to their team that they're not going to fight. And then they went out there and destroyed their opponent. Okay. Like, it's a very complicated emotional situation when you're going to go out and fight. And so if the UFC all of a sudden sets precedent that like a guy misses weight by 1 pound and they're just like, okay, I can either face this tremendous fear that I have right now. I have done all the preparation, but my brain is screaming at me, don't go into a cage and fight in front of 1 million people against this killer over here. He's probably going to be able to beat me. Like, I don't want to get knocked out. I don't want to get my arm broken. Like, I don't, like, so now we set precedent that they could just be like, oh, he missed weight. Like, now I'll just take my show money and bounce. That's the end of the conversation right there. Honestly, Luke's point is the end of the conversation. Like, of course they're not going to do that. And it's honestly, actually, at this point, with that on top of it, ridiculous to expect them to just pay the show money. Now, again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get anything, right? I'm not saying they shouldn't get anything. If they choose not to fight and they made weight, you know, maybe there's some provision in the contract for whatever. But putting it in there that if the other guy misses weight, because the other guy still has to accept the fight. They always have to accept the fight if the person misses weight. That they can just get their show money. Like, you cannot set that precedent. No, I'm not going to do it, man. It's not fair. Because everybody in the media will defend them, right? They know that. They're like, dude, I was there to fight. They missed weight. I made weight. They were at 172, right? The UFC wants a fight, okay? They're not paying them to show up and then grandstand about how they made weight. Like, that point shuts the entire argument down as far as I'm concerned. That's the end of the fucking conversation. You cannot run a business that way. You cannot do it. And again, I'm not going to let's just say this. I had a lot of conversations behind the scenes yesterday, and I feel extremely confident in my position now. Like, the things that I put out on the video, I kind of threw it out there to some people who have absolutely, like, ironclad, bulletproof credibility in the fight business. And they were like, no, you're right. They're like, he didn't fight, dude. They should, like, the exact example was you paid for a delivery to arrive on time. It didn't get there. You don't pay for it anyway. Like, the reason that it didn't get there, it's not it's not the trucker's fault. You're still, even though the truckers got attacked by terrorists, okay, you're still not paying the trucking company if they didn't deliver the goods. I'm like, that makes perfect sense to me. But anyway, Luke Thomas made a really good point, and I wanted to point to it since I was such a dick to him before, and that was literally just completely solidified my argument. Now, he might have done an entire video saying that the entire UFC's position is total bullshit, but that point, as far as I'm concerned, shuts the entire argument down. Okay, so that is that. I'm going to need to edit that down because it's like for 16 minutes, and it's only 1 point. Anyway, all right, so now I'm done. That's what I have. I love you guys. Bye.